We are continuing our study of the Maimer HaTzelem from Volozhin between Shar Aleph and Shar Beis of the Nefesh HaHaim. We completed our study of the Nefesh HaHaim. That's a good time to learn the Maimer HaTzelem. And he's talking about what does it mean that man was created b'tzelem ubidmus, two terms the Torah uses, b'tzalmenu b'dmusenu. And he's talked about Daled Yesoidos, earth, wind, and fire, as well as water. And he's grouped them that water, fire, and wind are active elements, and they act upon earth. And it corresponds to the four oisiois of Yud Kei Vav Kei, where there's two hays, and the second hay is representative of Shechina, the vessel, the recipient of all the action. And the last thing that he said when we learned last week was he differentiated between Tzelem and Dmus, that Tzelem is Mibchinas Almin Stimin, V'Dmus Mibchinas Almin Disgalien. So Tzelem is a more inner thing, and Dmus is more outwardly. And also that Tzelem is a masculine, and Dmus is a feminine thing, Koyach Poil B'Nif'al. And Rabbi Frankel here has really nice stuff on that. That the Hebrew word Tzelem and Dmut are both words used to mean image or likeness. However, a distinction is being drawn here in their meaning that Tzelem refers to the active components of the comparison being referred to as male, i.e. the giver, whereas Dmut referring to the passive component of the comparison being referred to as female, i.e. the recipient. Where the action of the giver, i.e. fire, water, and wind, is only evident through its impact on the recipient, i.e. earth, i.e. to follow the analogy, by seeing the resulting child of the process. So he's speaking in metaphors of there's this interactive power coming through fire, water, and wind, and it's invisible to us. It's imperceptible. It's in the Almin Stimim, in these concealed worlds, but it's acting upon something that is chitzoini, that is like maybe enveloping it, a nekeva, a feminine aspect, and that is receiving the impact of the fire, wind, water, and expressing it outwardly. And that's the alma de miskalian, the feminine form. That's where we left. Yes, Shimon?
I'm sorry. No, I always like the linguistic aspects of our limud. So tell me if you think this is holds any water. Between the two words, maybe the nuances. Demut, conjures in my mind domeh, something, hechidami, like what is this similar to? There's like a similarity. Tzelem is like silum, where you snap a picture and you get, maybe not a mirror image, but a much more of a reflective image. So I don't know, maybe that's more similar than the mut. I don't know.
Beautiful, really beautiful idea. I'd be curious to look into, the Radak or other, Rishonim and who are looking at these words and so forth. And maybe Rabbi Tzla will give us more of it. But you're saying a beautiful idea about the word demut, milashon doime, and dimayon, similarity, and so forth, versus tzelem. So you talked about litzalem, which HaTzelem, we know that word of like a statue or even something like that. It bears a certain structural similarity. So beautiful idea. Okay, so this is where we got up to, and he's continuing now, and he has a really awesome idea. So we've described two aspects, again, a male and a female, an inner and an outward. And so we've done a certain amount of justice, at least beginning, to the words B'Tzalmenu Kidmusenu, which is, of course, a pasuk in the Torah, that God says that. And this I really love this. K'moshe Kodesh Baruch Hu. This is a big theme in the Vilna Gaon's Torah. In many places, he talks about this. K'moshe Kodesh Baruch Hu nistar mitzad atzmusoi, v'leis machshava tvisa bei, klal, rak mitzad pe'uloisa v'toivois, nigle lanu tuvoi, v'chol mili demeitav. So there's one sentence that's very succinct, that a Kadosh Baruch Hu is nistar mitzad atzmo, benigle mitzad maisav. God is totally concealed and unknowable unto himself. Leis machshava tvisa beklal. We can't conceive of God. He's totally unknowable. He's so different than us. And yet, he created us. He created the earth. He gave us the Torah. So we do know God. We know God through his actions and his interaction with us. And so now the Mechaber here is comparing the Tzelem and the Dmus, like the knowable and the unknowable, to Hashem in his Atzmus Yisbarach, his inner self is unknowable, but mitzad Maisav he is knowable. Kain hanefesh ruach uneshama shebe'adam eina museget lemachshava rak al pi pe'ulatem al yedei haguf. Can you really know your soul? You know, our mind, our brain, the thoughts that we think are really all very physically oriented. We know stuff about the physical world. We know some abstract concepts. We could know about love. We could know 2 + 2 is 4. There are abstractions that we can imagine, but we mostly know physical stuff. And so can we really know even our own nefesh, ruach, and neshama? We're aware they exist, but we can't really know them. We know them. Our musag and our chashiva, our thought process on them, is really how they influence the body, okay? And the way they animate us and give us thoughts and feelings and energy and life. That's really how we know the nefesh, ruach, and neshama, not unto themselves, but as they're mislabshim b'toich haguf, but as they're animating the body. It's the body that we really know, okay? So that's similar to the Tzelem and the Dmus, that we don't really know the Tzelem, but the Dmus, this likeness, that is the female recipient of the energy of the Tzelem and expressing it outwardly, that's more what we know, okay? The Afgam Zois ein roim oisa rak museges mitziusa. We still don't know it. We recognize its existence. He quotes a Gemara now. In the Baruch Nafshi Es Hashem, it's capital Kuf Daled and Kuf Hey. It says the word Baruch Nafshi Es Hashem 5 times in Tehillim, and so the Gemara in Bracha says, what does David want from that? What does he mean? Let my soul bless God, and why does he say it 5 times? Hani Chamisha Baruch Nafshi. What is that about? And the Gemara answers that there is a comparison, and he talked about this in the Nefesh HaHaim, between Nafshi and a Kadosh Baruch Hu. So it's appropriate that my Nefesh should bless God, because there's a certain relationship between Nafshi and a Kadosh Baruch Hu. What is that? So the Gemara says, Ma HaKadosh Baruch Hu roye ve'eino nireh af haneshama ro'ah ve'eino niris. Just like a Kadosh Baruch Hu sees everything, but cannot be seen. Ralph Waldo Emerson has a beautiful term called the transparent eyeball. And that's especially meaningful to me because my 10th grade teacher was a big fan of it. And so there was a sort of a smart aleck kid who was a year ahead of me. He went to a baseball game of the Cleveland Indians, and he got the pitcher to autograph a baseball to the transparent eyeball. So my English teacher in 10th grade, Mr. King, he had on his desk every day a baseball from the major leagues that said on it, to the transparent eyeball. So I always remember that. So that was Emerson's idea of a Kadosh Baruch Hu. that there's a transparent eyeball, that it sees everything, but you can't see it. So Malakadosh Baruch Hu roya ve'eino nireh, af haneshama ro'ah ve'eino niris. So there's a similarity here between Hashem himself, Kavayachol, that sees but is not seen, to our very soul that is much more shaykh to us, and it's created by God, and it's sort of located or hovering within us, and yet we can't really put our hands on it or see it, but it sees everything. So there's a comparison between the neshama and the Kadosh Baruch Hu. The Ayin Tomer Dvaira. He now references the Tomer Dvaira, which is a work by Moshe Cordovero, and he says the whole thing is about that comparison. Sha'al zeh soiviv kol divrei Kadosh Hashem, the Ramak, Moshe Cordovero Zal, as he says in Peragalik, Betchilaso, Bezilashonu, Ha'adam Roy, Sheyidameh lekoino, a person is meant to walk in the ways of God, to be similar to his maker. The Aziyah, Besoid Hatsura Ha'elyoina. Okay, he introduces one more term called Sura Elyona. Let's see how they translate that, like the supernal form, I guess, supernal form. So if a person walks in the way of God, like God is merciful and God is tolerant and long-suffering, and he puts up with a lot of nonsense that everybody does, if you are like that, so you are resembling God, you are like the Tzura Elyona. And the language of the Tomer Dvaira is Va'azia Besod Tzura Elyona Tselem Udmus. He uses the word Tselem Udmus. She'ilu Yeduma Begufo Be'lo Pe'uloisea Harehu Machziva Tzura. Okay. If you don't behave like God, if you resemble Hashem in body, Kaviyachol, God created man in his image, whatever that means. But so if you only have your human form physically, but you don't behave in a dignified, holy way, it's like you are counterfeiting. You are machziv. There's something deceitful in your behavior, because God created man in his image. B'tzalmeinu kidmuseinu. We're meant to live as representatives of God. And he gave us eyes to see and a mouth to say nice things and hands to do chesed and feet to stand on and to run, vayaratz Avram el Bakar, to run, to do chesed for other people. So if you use your body in a way to bestow goodness and share love with other people, then you really are similar to God. And there's a beautiful comparison between a human being and the divine. But if you use your body in a very selfish and just pleasure-seeking way, and very this worldly way, so there's something false, there's something mezuyaf, counterfeit, between your version of a human being and the way God created man in his image. So very, very powerful idea from Moshe Cordovero. And he says now from the HaHaim, the Arizal, the Zema Shekasev HaHaim, Ikar Yeridas Haneshama Laguf, Ulevarer Bechinas HaTzelem. The essential reason for the descent of the neshama down into this lowly world, into the body, is to separate the bad from the good. This word livarer, to separate the bad from the good in the aspect of the tzelem. So this is where the action is. The neshama has come down in this world to do something. Livarer, bein hatov l'ra, b'toch HaTzelem. Okay? So, Va'inyanu k'mo she'hatzelem perusho dfus. Okay, here, Ayin Perush Rashi, al pasuk b'tzalmenu kidmuseinu. K'mo derech mashal, mi shemitzayer b'machshavto eze dmus prati. La'asot sof ha'maise sheb'machshavto. yeah, a demus here is like a model or a mold, I think. You create like a mold. Like if you were gonna, actually, we used to do this when I was a kid. My brother, we had a whole bunch of, we used to make plaster of Paris. We had these molds of all sorts of different shapes. And we would make up this mixture of plaster of Paris and we'd pour it into the molds and make all fish and animals and all different things. And we also did candle molds. We'd melt wax and you'd pour the hot wax into a mold and it would be, whatever shape that we had the molds for. So that's whenever I think of the word dfus, I think of those molds. Because that's what Rashi says, that like God had a mold, as it were, to make man. And that mold somehow is in the image of God. But it's a diffuse, it's like a mold that you use to make something, that you make a vessel. He made man a vessel in his image, and he used this diffuse. And this diffuse is bitsalmoi. Okay, so the bitsalmeinu kidmusenu, the demus is like a diffuse that's made bitsalem. Kamo derek mashal, a person, he thinks about something, he conceives of, let's say, a piece of art or a sculpture, and he makes then a dmus prati lasot in order to make it, to produce what he has in his mental image. He creates some sort of form or even a mold. Tchila me'orer sichlo lahamtzit tzelem udfus באופן שיוכל לעשות על ידי HaTzelem הדמוס פרטי שרוצה. So as example, one who forms a mental image of some specific form to create an end result according to his mental image, first he stimulates his mind to bring into existence a tzelem and model in a manner that he'll be able to make through the tzelem the specific form that he desires. Okay, so there's, in a sense, a two-step process. Umamsi dfus pnimi, and he crafts an inner mold, shal al yado taseh pnimis hakli, kafi habeis kibul shirotzeh. So, let's see. With that, he produces, initially he arouses his intellect to invent an image and mold in a way in which the desired likeness can be constructed. With that, he produces the inner part of the mold, which fashions this inner part of the desired object, and with the desired design of the inside. Umamtzi dfus pnimi, shal yado taseh pnimis hakli, kafi habeis kibul shirotzeh. V'gam dfus chitzoni, hamakif dofanei hakli, lahagbil adfanot, be'ovyam umidatam kafi ritzono. Okay, so there's two things here. There's an inner one that's going to give shape to the inner vessel, and there's an outer one that's going to give shape to the outer vessel. It's going to be thickness and dimensions according to the will of the inventor, the artist, the sculptor. Okay. V'shneim ke'echad hem tzelem v'dfus echad. And these two things together, these two parts together, are one image and mold, except that one part goes inside the object to form the required amount of space within it, and the other part bounds the object to form the walls in their correct size. Okay, wow. So, so one's like the inner space. So we have two things, like there's inner and outer. There's inner space, and then there's the outer surrounding container. And now there's actually a note here. The note is brought at the end of my HaTzelem and is entitled "Example of a Mold Resulting in a Characteristic." Let's see if we have it right here. Yeah, we have it right here. Haga, kamo demisi lekaat midbar, a pasuk in Tehillim. Okay. Let's see. Tehillim kuf base. So we have these ones. Here it is. in this pasuk, I am like a great owl in the wilderness, an owl among the ruins. Damisi likaas midbar, haisi kechos charavos. So this word damisi, that's what he's focusing on. Okay, so let's see, what does he want from this? Like it says in Tehillim, kamo damisi likaas midbar, perush shekeshem shepu'ulot hake'at. Just like the owl, it is the way of the owl lisrachek miyishuv, to distance itself from a settled community, and velizok yom v'layla b'kol nahi. So we all know, we can all sort of imagine an owl, an owl cooing in a desolate place. Kein hitrachek hu mimkoimoi vayetzoyek b'nenach yom v'layla. So too, David is distanced from his place and he's groaning day and night. These gavrus mezeg hamara shchoira shelakaat gorem la atzvus lizoik. Okay, the owl has a dominant mara shchoira, the black bile, the depression, right? Has this negative energy, negative hormones. His gavrus mezeg maras shchoira. That's what's causing the owl to be sad, and that's why it's crying out. Ve'atzlus leishev b'mekoma b'midbar, and it has like a laziness that keep it dwelling by itself in the wilderness. Kein mirube tsaroisav gavra alav hamara shchoira libroyach michevrat b'nei adam v'lizok nehi kamo she'amar sham ki efer kalechem achalti v'shikuvai bivchi masachti keteva choylin mara shchoira. So Rabbitzla is describing David that he's depressed, basically. This pasuk, ke'efer kalechem achalti, I've eaten ashes like bread and mixed my drink with tears. So it's a lot of negative energy and crying and misery. So that's what he's describing. Yes. Sheyesh lo taiva lechol pechamim v'gechalim v'livkot tamid. He has a desire to eat charcoal and to cry all the time. V'av shelo nira b'dmus be'olotav ela hizboidedu subechi. We can't see all that. All we see is that he's isolating himself and crying. What do we see in a depressed character? We see isolation. He doesn't want to get out of bed. He doesn't want to leave his room. And we see crying, perhaps. Achilas efer. Umahut pnimius mizgo v'izgabrus mara uchma lo nira bechush. But we don't see mamish, the black bile. We don't see the hormonal imbalance. We could, surmise. We could analyze and think about that. But we definitely can't see that. We can only see behaviors. You can't see what's going on the inside. Ve'im kol zeh b'sechel musag shepnimius hamara shchoira mad'iga mida'aga shenichnas bo kvar v'tzoros hadagot shesivavuhu vehekifuhu od mibachutz. Okay, I have a little bit of experience battling depression, and when there's a lot of negative stuff going on in your life, your business fails and you owe a lot of money and you don't know how you're going to get out of this situation, various stressors in life which create all this darkness around you and you can't see any light. So we can't see those things, but they have biochemical effect and they create all this negative stuff inside a person. And so he has all this mara shchoira. It's coming from his worries, his concerns, his negative situation, from tsaros and daigos that are surrounding him from the external world. Hein heima HaTzelem ve'atfus ruchani. Those can be understood as tzelem ve'dfus. They're giving him his structure. His structure is depressed and negative because of the things that are happening to him from within and from without. Shal al yado hayu pu'uloisav b'dmus prati, kazel livkot v'lizot v'lhisboided. Okay, here they said, they translated a pelican. Just like a pelican behaves, the distance itself. Let's see how he translated here. We observe isolation and crying. The true nature of the internal domination of the black humor is not perceivable. Even so, it's understood by the intellect that the inner aspect of the black humor entered him as a result of worry, and the afflictions and worries that surround and encompass him too from without. They are the spiritual HaTzelem and the model that result in his behavior in this specific form, to cry and to wail and to isolate himself. Okay, interesting. What exactly did Rabbi Yitzchak want from this annotation? I think he wanted the pasuk, that this pasuk has damisi. It has the word like the demus. So that's why I think he brought it. Damisi leka'as midbar. I'm like an owl or a pelican in the wilderness, crying and isolating myself. And he's been teaching us now that the HaTzelem and the demus are really internal and external around a person, and they're only perceptible, we can only perceive them through outer behaviors, not through their true essence. Like a Kadosh Baruch Hu, that's nistar mitzad atzmo and nigle mitzad maisav. Kacha derech mashal kisheratza bayrik baruch shmo livro adam mi afar shehu akli lishtamish lefi ritzoni's baruch shmo. So Hashem created man from the afar, from the dirt, from dust to dust, which is, it makes us a kli that we can serve God in a physical way. His min tchilat selem edfus. So Hashem prepared like a mold and a plan, a structure and a mold. That's what I'll say. HaTzelem is a structure and Edfus is a mold. That's what I think. Shetucha le'asod demuta adam beguf ve'varim shal yadeyam yuchal lif'ol pe'ulot prati'im. We can actually do stuff. Kafi ratzon Hashem yisbarach shmo. We can put on tefillin. We could wear tzitzis. We could do chesed. We could write a sefer Torah. So we have fingers and we have arms and legs and bodies. And that all comes b'tzelem udefus. Ubara Hashem shrashim shemehem himtziu tzelem pnimi umakif ruchaniim. Let me see that. When God wanted to create, when he first made available the HaTzelem and the mold, his body and limbs could be made through them. He can perform many specific actions according to God's will. And he created 4 roots from which he produced the spiritual inner and outer image. I'm not positive this last word of beruchaniyut or ruchaniim, what he wanted from that, but basically he's talking about he created 4 roots from which he brought into existence the spiritual, internal, and encompassing HaTzelem. So again, I'm concluding here with this idea that we began with, and we're concluding with, that the HaTzelem and the demus work in tandem. The HaTzelem is an inner thing. I'm calling it sort of structure connected to the Tzura Elyoina, and the outer thing is like the form, the mold that Hashem is putting it into. So man has this inner aspect of what he's about and where he's from in his spiritual energy, and it gets put into the body. And we live within a mold, and we have, actually a body to do things and to do mitzvahs and Torah and so forth. And so the HaTzelem and the demus are how God created us in his image, to using the inner world, which we perceive through its impact on the outer world, and that's how we perceive God, and that's how our own spirituality is also to be perceived. We can't touch our neshama, but we know it's here because of its effect on our lives and what it enables us to do. Okay. Thank you for being here and sharing this really fascinating stuff with me. Looking forward to continuing next time.
Yeshkoch.
Looking to you. Enjoy the Dead Sea.
Thank you.
Take care.